You're watching the Wine and Cheese Music Session, only on RadioFreeNY.com.
Hi, I'm Carl Dixon, singer-guitarist in my band Coney Hatch. Glad you took the elevator up to the RFNY Penthouse Suite. I'll be sipping some April wine, slicing some cheese, and playing some tunes. God keep our land glorious and radio free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We are with Carl Dixon. Now, Carl, you might have been asked this question a lot, but those who don't know, rumor has it that Coney Hatch's name is derived from an English lunatic place. Where actually does the name Coney Hatch come from?
Coney Hatch is the name of a building that once was one of the most famous lunatic asylums in England, in the Muswell district of London, and it's now an old folks' home. But for many years it was very famous as, if you ever heard the phrase, putting someone in the booby hatch. That's where that came from, Coney Hatch.
Did you ever visit this place?
No, but our bass player Andy's parents lived near it, so they told him the stories about it when he was growing up.
Now, where was the first place Coney Hatch played, and what took place when you knew that Coney Hatch was reaching some big-time success, such as, like, what was the first radio hit, what song, and like what station was it on?
You mean where was the first place we played once we realized this?
Well...
Because those are two very different events.
Right, that's right.
The first place we played was a crummy bar on the Quebec side of the Ottawa River in a town called Elmer, near Ottawa. And that was the first place I played with the band back in February of '81. And the first time we knew something good was happening for our record and all that, I heard the single that I wrote for the record called Hey Operator on the local Top 40 station, which was kind of the indicator station for all of Canada, called 1050 Chum. I was out in a park with with my girlfriend at the time, and it just came over somebody's transistor radio, so it was extremely exciting.
Can you actually give us a little sampling, like an acoustic version of Hey Operator?
Oh my goodness. I pay my money, dial my numbers, got the operator on the line. I want to call long distance, that little girl of mine. I said, hey operator, make a telephone talk to me. I said, hey operator, make a telephone talk to me. That's kind of the gist of the thing. It, you know, a good rock song is all about the catchy guitar intro and a punchy chorus, so.
Have you ever had any extremely intimate moments with someone while a Coney Hatch song was playing on the radio? And did all the participants have a happy ending?
Well, that's intensely personal. I honestly don't recall any such occasion, but I'm sure there must have been. And it's always a happy ending.
Is there any one or two Coney Hatch songs you are most proud of on strictly an artistic level? You know, maybe you
yes.
wasn't a hit single, but you just
yes,
made a great song, well written, well crafted.
Yes, there were a couple on our second album, which was called Out of Hand, that musically were really strong, and I really felt good about the lyrics I wrote for them. One called To Feel the Feeling Again, and another called The Music of the Night. Those I really felt like I'd expressed myself in the best artistic level that I was capable.
Mm-hmm. Can you do a little like mashup of that now? So we can get a little taste of it
let's see. Woke with a feeling like my ship sailed in. Where it came from, I don't know. I can't account for all the sleepless nights. Where do the days all go? We watch them slipping away. What are you willing to pay to feel the feeling again? To feel the feeling again. Hold back the daytime. Don't wanna see the dawn. The spell must not be broken. So elusive, here then gone. If peace and calm were energy, the silence would shine bright. So listen if you will, my friend, to the music of the night. A mashup, so to speak.
Oh, we like that. So darn good. Any one song that you felt, Cole, really should have, you felt in your own mind, should have been a hit song, but either your record label refused to release it as a single, or just radio never embraced it?
Well, let's see, 3 albums of tunes with Coney Hatch. Well, one jumps out at me, but it's from the most recent album, which everybody has that problem with modern radio, but in terms of the old days, maybe, probably, we released this as a single and I thought it had a good shot, but for whatever reason, the label stopped pushing, and it was a song I wrote about telling a girlfriend that she doesn't own my ass. What's that? This was 81.
And radio never took it to where it should have gone.
Well, who gets to say where it should have gone, right? I thought it had a good chance. So it was going kind of like this. In case you haven't noticed yet, it's over. No use playing girlfriend games with me. No use phoning my house every evening. Just don't bother coming round to see. You ain't got me like you want me. You ain't got me. You ain't got me like you want me. You ain't got me. That's a bit of that one. It's had a good jumping beat to it, and who knows?
It
It's all, especially at that time in the 80s, it was all about how much promotion money the label was willing to put behind a song.
Well, it was radioactive to us, that's for sure, and radio-free all at the same time. And at the time that Coney Hatch had their biggest touring and radio success, like any so-called family, it's not always fun. But what was some of the most difficult parts of that musical journey? The friction within the band, or the record label in the band, or whatever, and you know, how did you...
I would say that the toughest part of it, as it is for so many young bands, is we were young and naive and didn't understand enough about how the business side of things worked at that time. And I think within the band there was just a social dynamic of me being different than the others. I was pretty straight-laced. I never touched drugs, and I was always taking care of my fitness and running. I didn't go to parties really, so I was considered maybe the square peg in the round hole of the band. It too often ended up with everybody else on one side and Carl on the other side. So I would have either handled things a little differently, because I was very, very serious, extremely serious as a young man. My attitude was always, man, it's hard enough to make it in this kind of business without destroying yourself at the same time as you're trying to make it. So I think maybe I was a little self-righteous at times with that thought. And the others were just having the time of their lives, so, you know, I can't blame them.
Did that kind of mindset that you had, did that kind of affect how you would write a lyric? And did the band members feel, hey, Carl, your lyrics are a little too soft, we want to be a little harder edge? Did that ever come up? Because
I think that I was able to, no, I was able to gauge what was appropriate for the band's sound and image in terms of the lyric writing, but I do recall our manager taking me to lunch at one point. He was the manager of Rush as well, and was then also, and said to me something like, you know, Carl, this intelligent young man of rock and roll thing just isn't working for you. It's not a great image. I didn't know who else to be. That's, you know, I was just expressing my identity, and
but how did that come out? Did it come out on stage or in the lyrics?
I suppose I wasn't enough of a wild man for the prototype rock frontman kind of guy. Plus, I wasn't really the only frontman. The bass player, Andy Curran, and I were definitely in a competition. I didn't know I was in a competition as much as I was, but I realized in retrospect that he was really wanting to share that spotlight. So I wasn't really the de facto frontman. We had a lot of overlapping of roles within the band. So there was, I think, a certain amount of confusion that way. Ultimately, it proved a strength over time. We had many of our fans tell us they liked that about the band. So often the people within the band aren't the best judge of what people like about them.
The stereotypical expression, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, can you recall some of the most wacky and wild parts of the ride, either that you experienced or you saw, you heard, or whatever, be it tour bus or backstage or hotels or whatever? We want to hear the dirt of what you recall. You don't have to necessarily mention names, but we want to know that side of the biz.
Well, it always surprised me the number of girls that were interested in putting themselves in that position of being subservient to a band, almost any band.
Why is that surprising?
I don't know. I always thought I don't know. I thought girls were more ladylike than that, I suppose. And it's still how I placed them on a pedestal. So I really had some lack of understanding about what all that was about. Everybody else had plenty of the sex and drugs part. I had my share of the sex part, I suppose. But there was lots to go around for anybody that was interested in the backstage stuff. And the rock and roll, of course, was endless. That's what we were there for.
Now, being born and raised in Ontario, the hotbed of hockey, did you have any childhood friends who later became known NHL players?
Actually, a few people from my school. I went, in my high school class, there was a whole group of them that were a championship midget age team, and they had a special trip to Russia and because they won a Canadian, something that was called the Wrigley Gum Company, sponsored a hockey championship in Canada, and the prize was a trip to Russia. So about 7 of the guys on that team I went to school with, and most of them ended up in the NHL later on. So that was kind of neat.
You remember any names?
Well, a guy named Mike Gartner that played for the New York Rangers for a time and Washington and Minnesota, and he ended up in Toronto. And I guess Phoenix was the last part of his career. But yeah, he was one of the top scorers of all time. And, Dougie Keen's a goalie that played for Boston and Los Angeles was on that team. And yeah, there were a few guys that turned that experience into a professional career. It was very interesting to see, especially at that time when it was just starting to be the big bucks when my group graduated into the big leagues.
And did you hang out with any of these players, like Gardner or anyone?
No, we were more like passing each other in the hall, guys, and being in some classes together. It wasn't pals.
Now, have you ever played hockey yourself? And if so, what position and brand of skates and sticks?
I played tons of hockey, more as an adult, but I played as a kid too, and I got my first shoulder dislocation from playing, well, my first and second shoulder dislocations from playing hockey. We used to have a team here based in Toronto called the Rock and Roll All-Stars charity hockey team, and so there was me and Andy Curran from Coney Hatch and some guys from a group called Brighton Rock and some guys from Red Rider and Larry Gowan, who's now the singer of Styx. He and his 2 brothers formed a forward line. Larry was a big star in Canada in his own right in those days. And oh man, all kinds of people came and went on that team from different Canadian groups. So yeah, I shoot right. I played defense in those days. I graduated to center later on, but I was one of the defense crew at that time. And CCM tax for skates.
Now, it's probably pretty ironic that where, here it is, you lived in the capital of hockey, and you ended up, I'm sure, playing in large hockey arenas with Coney Hatch, no?
We played in 16 of the NHL rinks at different times, yeah, on different tours.
You recall what arenas?
Oh, well, we played a couple of times here at Maple Leaf Gardens. We were at the Nassau County Coliseum, the Philadelphia Spectrum, the Winnipeg Arena, the Met Center in Minneapolis, the Northlands Coliseum where the Oilers played, the Saddle Dome in Calgary, all kinds of places.
So you must have, at some point, hitting the stage, you must have thought, wow, I kind of reached something. Yeah. I didn't become that hockey star, but I'm playing on the stage in the same arena.
Sure, because the Montreal Forum too. We played there, and the Quebec Colisée, where the Nordiques used to play. Sure, that was our frame of reference of what fame looked like. Was the famous hockey players on the ice every Saturday night from these beautiful arenas. So yeah, that was quite a special, energized feeling that we're in the same building where our hockey heroes played. And a very interesting thing I've seen over the years, because I've befriended lots of hockey players since then, is all the hockey players wanted to be musicians. And all the musicians I know that grew up here wanted to be hockey players.
Right. And then it really goes full circle because you got to, puck around with some of these crazy Coney women.
Puck around, that's a good one.
Yeah,
yeah, there were women around, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then you go from these big arenas to how about the most disgusting venues that Coney Hatch ever played in? What was disgusting and where and when?
Well, there were places in especially the small towns in the north of Canada that weren't very well cared for. So we'd end up with band houses quite more than I care to remember. Band houses were always the most brutal accommodations. They usually had holes punched in the walls and not very well taken care of. The outside cold air would come in from the winter time because they weren't very well insulated, and yeah, puke infested carpets, and sometimes and those are the good places. So yeah, we had some very disgusting band houses up in the north, especially.
And with the success that the band had, I imagine you must have had some European and/or Asian tours.
We didn't get to Europe for many years. Until 2004, we finally got there to the Sweden Rock and some other side trips to that. But no, we were kept pretty much to North America shores at that time, which was a shame because we were doing really well in Europe, but because we had not very smart management, they didn't tell us that. Nobody wanted to spend the money to take the band to Europe, even though that was where our records were selling the best.
Was this the same management team as the Rush team?
Yeah, but they were relying on the record label putting up the money. Polygram Mercury. Management offices are not about spending money. Their whole job is to go yell at the label to pry money out of them. Mm-hmm. So the label had decided at that time that Def Leppard was a higher priority. And, you know, I guess they were right.
And besides playing like Long Island's Nassau Coliseum, did you have any shows right in Manhattan proper?
Manhattan proper, no, but we had a couple of crazy ones. I remember one at the Brooklyn Zoo, which was just near the subway station, and there was a group called Monroe that was playing with us. This was our New York City, well, I guess it's considered New York City, debut, and our sound man and light man elected to choose that night to get blind and deaf drunk. So they didn't do a very good job in presenting our sound and lights to the assembled multitude, so that was a bit disappointing.
Can you recall having the best pizza in New York City or anywhere in the world? Because we are pizza freaks here at Radio Free.
You know, I had Manhattan-style pizza, New York-style pizza, in a downtown place with a manager friend of mine, a music manager named Barry Bergman, who took me downtown to introduce me to the joy of New York-style pizza, but I can't remember which place it was. It was somewhere downtown Manhattan.
Who was your most favorite singer-songwriter or bands that Coney Hatch opened up for, and or you opened up for them? And what were like some of their favorite songs of theirs?
You know, my favorite band to play with, because we had such a nice time with them and they were such good guys, was Iron Maiden. We had almost 40 shows with them, and so I didn't know much about their music before we started the tour. That was when they had their Peace of Mind album out, when they were just starting to break really big. And so I really got to enjoy La Troupa, and Run to the Hills was, of course, a huge hit off that.
Can you play a snippet of that? Can you try your rock of
Oh my goodness.
me doing his version of Iron Maiden?
Oh my God.
Run to the hills, run for your life. Run to the hills.
It's probably not fast enough.
Run for your life.
Yeah, that's about all I can get. I never learned them, I just enjoyed listening to them.
Did you also play out with Cinderella?
No, Cinderella came along just as we were winding up our first run as Coney Hatch.
Did you at least have some fun partying with Iron Maiden?
Oh yeah, we had some legendary parties
Right,
with
let's
them.
hear. You got to tell us. I want to hear a little bit of the uncensored Iron Maiden, Coney Hatch.
Oh, I'm not really a kiss and tell kind of guy, but there was a really good wild one in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, because Nico McBrain had stabbed himself with a pencil, he claimed, and had blood poisoning in his arm and was not allowed to play in case the blood poisoning went to his heart. So they had to cancel their show in Saskatoon that night. So what we did to have some kind of event in the city, we set up a Coney Hatch show at a local bar there that had bands. We just used their gear and we played for the bar tab, except the owner hadn't counted on Iron Maiden and their British lager louts crew coming down and just drinking the place dry. So he was pleading for mercy partway through the night, and our tour manager told him, no, sorry, a deal's a deal. So the 2 or 3 of the Iron Maiden guys got up and jammed with us that night on our song, which was great. And then everybody retreated back to the Holiday Inn in Saskatoon, and we occupied an entire floor of the with the madness that went right through till sunup. And yes, that there are people that still talk to me about that night in Saskatoon all these years later.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Cole, because we actually have some vintage footage from that night on YouTube that we're going to be exposing to the world. Just kidding.
Right. You got me there for a second.
Yeah, I'm good that way. Now, what is your one of your favorite all-time songs that some other songwriter or band wrote that you said to yourself, "Damn, I should have written a song like that"? And can you give us a little sampling of it?
I'm still chewing my cheese,
Right.
and a cracker and choking on the crumbs.
Hey, we like imperfection. We like that. Spit and sing at the same time. Right.
I'll be a crumb-spewing monster.
That's good. We like that.
Okay, so then we have a bit of wine.
Right.
While I think about what song
Right.
that might be.
You just said, "Wow, man, that would have been a cool song for me to have written."
Well, it's The Who from Quadrophenia.
Here by the sea and sand, nothing ever goes as planned. I just couldn't face going home. It was just a drag on my own. They finally threw me out. My mom got drunk on stout. My dad couldn't stand on 2 feet as he lectured about morality. And now I guess the family's complete. Me hanging round on the streets or here on the beach. The girl I love is a perfect dresser. Wears every fashion, gets it to the T. Heavens above, I've got to match her. She knows just how she wants a man to be. Leave it to me.
Sea and Sand by The Who. Quadrophenia was an album that I just took into my pores back when I was in high school.
It's so true. When I heard those songs on the Heritage Rock Station in New York, WNEW-FM, was like, wow, that's like top shelf music.
RadioFreeNY.com kills mainstream dead.